Football is being ruined. Slowly but surely, the beautiful game has become more and more Americanized, moving away from the traditional values of the game that we've all grown to love in favour of wealth. Welcome to Halftime Football, where today I'll be going through some of the problems that are continuing to affect football and just why they're so detrimental to the sport. Where better to start than the European Super League debacle? Good God. 12 teams decided last April that they were ready to form a new European club competition where there would be 15 founder members who could not get relegated, alongside 5 other teams who would have to qualify, who are also known as the disposable peasants. I don't even know where to start with this one. May as well begin with the fundamental logistics, I guess, like 15 teams that can't get relegated. Why would you do that? European football as a sport is essentially survival of the fittest. If you have a bad season, you're punished, whether that's with less revenue or relegation. The ESL would wipe out the joys of winning in the last minute or losing in the last minute, all because, well, it doesn't really matter in the end, does it? You can't get relegated. Those moments are the ones that make football so emotionally attaching. Why would you get rid of that? They essentially wanted to convert to the formats like the MLS, the NBA, the NFL, you know, where the seasons don't get exciting until the playoffs. Turning teams into franchises like in American sports would suck the last little bit of excitement out of the average European fan. Could you really imagine it though? Football free of consequences? I mean, I'm sure Stan Kroenke and Malcolm Glazer were watering at the mouth at that prospect. Would there be entertainment? Yeah, sure, there'd be heavyweight clashes every week, but it would get really old really quickly. That's what the Champions League and the World Cup are for, the best teams playing on the biggest stage. It's so special because of how rare it is. If you have the Super League, you're seeing these games every single week. It's up to a point where no one would care anymore. On top of that, national leagues would be ruined because all the revenue would be funneled into the ESL. This would force teams like Leicester or Brighton to offload their best players to survive. There is literally not a single club that benefits from all this. The only people who benefit are the owners of those big 12 clubs. Also, those 12 teams clearly showed that local fans, or as they called them, legacy fans, mean absolutely nothing to them. They would have played games all around the world had it passed, meaning trips to America, China, the Middle East, you name it. Do you honestly think the average guy who's now struggling to afford a season ticket because of the living crisis would really be happy essentially seeing their club move to another continent just for the sake of exposure, merchandise sales and overpriced tickets? Honestly though, what do those clubs even need more money and exposure for? Football is the most watched sport in the world, and those 12 teams put together have more supporters than the rest of the world combined. Thinking about it though, it's actually quite simple to explain why they wanted this, and you could probably guess why. The owners, especially the Glazers for example, wanted a secure source of finance so that they can just siphon money out of the club continually without putting any back in. They want inflated tickets and merchandise to sell, not for the financial benefit of the club, but for the lining of their own pockets. A guaranteed pay packet bankrolled by JP Morgan was all that Perez and co were after here, but thankfully it fell through. Though then again, it wouldn't really surprise me if it comes up again in the near future. Sadly though, decisions have already been made at FIFA, UEFA and all the big associations, which are quite clearly just further steps towards commercialization of football. It started in 1992 and 1993 with the formations of the Premier League from the First Division and the Champions League from the European Cup. I'll start with the Champions League as I don't think the reasons why are particularly common knowledge. The European Cup was a totally different competition in itself, but it still held the same reward of the coveted Big Ears trophy. One team from each nation, which would usually be the top division champions, would compete in a straight knockout tournament. There was no group stage. Ties would be two-legged, and it would bring some of the biggest shocks in the competition's history, as anyone could really beat anyone. From that competition we got the victories of Red Star Belgrade and Steaua Bucharest. This all changed in 1993 when UEFA formed the Champions League in order to divert attention from clubs who were looking at breaking away from the European Cup and starting their own competition, which was basically going to be like the European Super League, and it was presumably for monetary purposes. The new competition introduced the group stage, which meant a lot more matches and therefore a lot more sponsorships and just a lot more money in the competition in general. In the top 5 leagues, up to 4 teams would be allowed to compete depending on UEFA coefficients. This created an even bigger financial divide between the big European clubs and the minnows, with the gulf in quality due to financial rewards becoming absolutely absurd, to a point where now it's seen as a miracle for teams like Sheriff to beat Real Madrid. There's a reason why runs like Ajax 3 years ago for example are so exciting. They simply don't happen anymore because the formation of the Champions League helped increase the financial gap between teams within the Premier League, Serie A, Ligue 1, Bundesliga and La Liga. The landscape of European football has changed drastically, and we've grown used to seeing Real Madrid and Bayern Munich and Liverpool and Man City succeeding every year. It's quite sad. There's also an incredibly unfair distribution of wealth resulting from the size of clubs, with teams like Man United being able to reap more than treble than what a team like Shakhtar would get for being eliminated at the same stage. From there, it's just a constant cycle of the rich getting richer and that gulf of quality increasing. Also, it keeps getting worse with that competition. From 2024, the amount of teams competing will go from 32 to 36. Will those spots go to lesser teams though? Of course they won't. They'll go to countries based on their UEFA merit. We could now have Arsenal finishing 5th and qualifying instead of some team who rightfully earned their place in the competition by winning their domestic league. UEFA are literally bowing down to those who wanted to move to the Super League, and the way these reforms are being done is absolutely horrendous. Group stages are also for some reason now a thing of the past, with one big massive 36 team league being preferred for the first stage. Teams will play 10 fixtures in this stage, and the top 8 finishers will qualify for the round of 16. Teams between 9th and 24th will be drawn in a playoff match to decide the remaining 8 spots. Why have they even done this? Yes, the group stage system was flawed and it didn't really allow small teams to progress, but this just makes things worse. There are more games, meaning the teams with more money will buy more players, creating a bigger gulf in quality between the big teams and the small teams. It's even more of a closed shop for the big boys, and this is exactly what Ceferin was speaking out against when the ESL came about. Okay, hypothetically, let's say a team like Dinamo Zagreb progresses to the round of 16 because they won their playoff game. They'll get absolutely battered by anyone they play because of the sheer difference in finance and squad quality. Shocks are far less likely to happen in this format, and we're going to see a lot more of the same teams in the finals. While I wasn't alive for the European Cup, it sounds far more interesting than this. If you are really interested in this specific bit, go check out my video on how to make the Champions League great again, where I sort of discuss how to make a more level playing field. Anyway, as for the Premier League's formation, it was slightly less worrying and made a lot more sense in terms of benefiting the quality of English football, but it still left a lot of lower league clubs out in the cold. English football as a whole was struggling in the early 90s, and the threat of a breakaway league from the Football League was looming. The FA couldn't bear to see this happen and did everything they could to maintain the First Division structure due to the funding they received from the league's income, but Rupert Murdoch tabled an irresistible offer to the FA, a £304 million deal to be spread over 5 years. That sort of money was unheard of in football at the time. Anyway, they signed the contract with no hesitation, and we have what we now know as the Premier League. And that point there is where English football turned for the worst, and the underlying greed of the biggest clubs truly came to light. The driving forces behind this move, which were Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham and Everton, knew that an era of worldwide satellite television was among us and that they needed to capitalise. Breaking away into the Premier League meant that there was now no more need to share half your TV revenue with EFL clubs. Breaking away into the Premier League would mean far more international exposure, meaning more revenue for world-class teams like Man United and Arsenal. Breaking away into the Premier League was driven by money, and as a result, only 2 teams other than Man City, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal and Liverpool have won the league in nearly 30 years. The element of competition, much like in the Champions League, is basically gone. That's why doing a Leicester is such a huge thing these days, as once again these things just do not happen because of the gulf in quality and squad depth between the Big Six and the rest of the Premier League. In short, the formation of the Premier League and the Champions League have created such a disparity both financially and quality wise between the top teams and the bottom teams. Couple the financial power with stupid, impatient owners and you get squads like Manchester United and Barcelona's, who have suffered by having more money than sense in a desperate attempt to keep themselves at the top of the footballing food chain just so they can keep their closed shop. There's a reason those guys hate teams like Man City, Chelsea, PSG, Newcastle. They don't want any outsiders. And also we have the idea of another reform in the pipeline, the biennial World Cup. I don't think I really even need to explain why this is a stupid idea, but I'm going to anyway. FIFA have seen the amount of money in the Champions League every year, so they've decided they wanted their cut and they want to increase the frequency of the world's most watched competition. But what does that do? It decreases the specialty of the competition. What makes the World Cup so unique is its rarity. Every 4 years the whole world stops and watches the best players play on the biggest stage. And while doing this every 2 years may sound more appealing, it would slowly lose its magic. The Euros and Copa America wouldn't be able to happen, and domestic football would have loads of issues. It doesn't doesn't really make any sense from the point of view of an actual football fan. It would all be to the benefit of the casual who pays 50 quid a month for their Sky Sports subscription, sat in their armchair making stupid comments on football Twitter. FIFA just wants to monetize every single international game for their own benefit, and a perfect example of that is the Finalissima. Again, these people at the top of these federations, they don't care about you, they don't see you as a fan or even a human. You're a consumer to them, you're something for them to make money. That's why all these stupid financial-based reforms are coming. And continuing with the theme of the big boys all trying to make a closed shop for themselves, we had Project Big Picture proposed in October 2020. Basically, the owners of both Manchester United and Liverpool proposed a total restructure to English football, much like the one in 1992. Except, here's the thing, that restructure would give the Big Six and the 3 longest serving teams in the league special dispensation over all the decisions. The Premier League would also be reduced to 18 teams, while the EFL Cup and the Charity Shield, the latter of which being the most historic competitions in the country, would then be abolished. Now, there was one little detail they mentioned that conveniently created a beautiful loophole for them. Instead of the current requirement of 14 out of 20 teams needing to be in agreement with one another for any sort of league-wide footballing or commercial decision to be made, only 6 of the 9 clubs with special dispensation would have to agree on something for it to take effect. Essentially, it appeared to be part of an ultimate plan for the Big Six to break away to their Super League. They tried to cover this up by promising loads of aid to the EFL teams going bankrupt, but their intentions were clear. They wanted all the power and authority in the league so they could reshape things and make it their own in their own American style. You'd end up seeing Liverpool play Norwich in Saudi Arabia in the short term, all while they're planning the big Super League breakaway in the long term. As Boris Johnson surprisingly put it so well, this plan is exactly the type of backroom dealing that undermines trust in football's governance. Quite a funny comment for him to make in hindsight, but hey, we're here to talk about another group of idiotic leaders. Fortunately though, as I said, 14 teams would have had to agree on this, and it never really got past John Henry and the Glazers. The thing is about these American guys though, Glazer, Henry, Kroenke, they see their clubs as cash cows and nothing else. Roman Abramovich and Sheikh Mansour have invested both on and off the pitch to make their team successful, whereas the 3 owners I mentioned earlier have adopted a laissez-faire approach to things, and none more so than the Glazers. They've made a grand total of 2 statements to their fans over the years. One when they joined the club, and one where they were forced to because they were getting death threats over the ESL drama. Not only that, but due to the way they've purchased the club, they've racked up £600 million of debt, and they still take dividends out the club. Go watch my 18-minute video about their horrendous reign. They care far more about investor and shareholder relations than their fans. In fact, once again, like I mentioned earlier, they're not even fans to these people, they're consumers. This is exactly what I mean by Americanization. They're essentially bringing capitalism into football. Hence the tagline, created by the poor, stolen by the rich. Soon enough, the sport we all know and love will reach a point of no return, a point where many fans will be interested, but their opinions will mean nothing to the fat cats at the top. Football is dying, and something needs to be done sooner or later to stop these guys. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please be sure to like and subscribe. Sorry for the big break between this video and the last. I had COVID, where I couldn't really record a video or write a video even, hence this is a remake of a previous video I made. But anyway, if you did enjoy, like I said, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.